So my name is Joseph Williams. I'm the Executive Director of Technology for Perris Union High School District that's in Riverside County, California. We service about 10,500 students. We have three comprehensive high schools. We have a middle school. We have a continuation school, an adult school, a dependent charter. That dependent charter teaches grades 5 through 12, but our sweet spot of students are high school. And years ago, we worked on a program called Scholar Plus. We intentionally called it Scholar Plus before we actually did any work, even before we finalized our desired outcomes, because we wanted to name it a term that kept the focus on the right thing, and that kept the focus on the students, our scholars. And we wanted students to have attributes of a scholar, to be inquisitive, to be research-driven, to be lifelong readers. So our teaching and learning initiative that's based around technology, but not a technology plan, is called Scholar Plus, and it's intentionally so that we focus on the right thing. We focus on the students. So in 2011, I had the pleasure of going to ISTE. I try to go every year. Sometimes I cannot. But this is one of the famous quotes from Chris Lehman. Technology should be like oxygen, ubiquitous, necessary, visible. In the end, it's not about the technology. It's about the people using it. And that really hit home for us, that we shouldn't be doing a celebration when we break out the technology. We shouldn't open a Chromebook cart and trumpets blare and say, everybody, let's make a big deal, technology's here. It should be there, and it should always be there, and students should be able to use it to make decisions on their daily learning, right? Alan November said, we must prepare our students to make meaning from the overwhelming amount of information at their fingertips, right? It comes to them at like a fire hose type pace, and we as teachers can't shy away from it. We can't hide from social media. We can't hide from these things. We need to teach students how to use it to prepare them for the world. I often remind people in the beginning of a topic and at the end that I bring up this topic and then I argue against it, that technology is a tool and not a learning outcome. However, the platforms that we use, the tools that we use, the creation tools that we use can be a learning outcome. But I just wanted you to know that if people said, where's the data that this and that and this, I would say, well, where's the data when we switched from chalkboards to whiteboards, right? It was a tool. 2012 is when we started working on Scholar Plus. It actually came about because I was meeting some resistance as a teacher. I was meeting resistance, and somebody's throwaway line was, where's your plan? And that was just throwaway line. Where's your plan? And I drove home. Where's your plan? Where's your plan? It just kept bouncing outside of my head. Where's your plan? And we assembled a team of administrators, teachers, and classified staff to create our plan, and we did not know what that was. But we started with desired outcomes. We did not start choosing devices. We did not start choosing tools. We started with desired outcomes. The ability to have 24/7 learning, the ability to have hybrid or flipped classrooms, for students to have real-world experience, to be research-driven, and of course, equity in education. We started with those things. Big picture, I'm not going to go into too many slides, but if you're a tech director in the room and you're needing to lead large-scale tech integration, here's a good framework to use. A good framework to use is, what's the planning, the operations, the professional learning, the instructional resources, equity and access and transformation? A lot of times districts miss these. They miss these because they're so focused on the tech, they're so focused on the access points that they're not dragging in and bringing in the reason of why we're doing those things. So this is sort of a framework as you're adopting technology that I use. I would not say that I use it from the beginning. I was a classroom teacher when we wrote Scholar Plus. And it wasn't until I became the tech director that I said, this was a better framework so that we ground technology in the use of students' new use. So planning. I already told you that Scholar Plus was the reason why we chose that name. I won't go into too much detail on that. Here's a list of our desired outcomes, although we've changed them over the years to be more accurate in language. These are the processes that we work through. We do ongoing planning. I list Education Week for my own professional development. Ongoing planning and forecasting to keep ahead of the trends. I belong to a K-12 Congress, a Google think tank, a Directors Association, COSN. We constantly are forecasting what's going on to make sure that we're ahead of the curve. And we've done a good job of staying ahead of the curve, even noticing industry trends and predicting when some companies are going to be bought out and we don't want to use that new company, or they're going under. So we've done a good job of keeping ahead of the curve there. We have ongoing forecasting and examples. I belong to a K-12 consortium group, and we constantly create blueprints to help districts do things. As far as operations, this wasn't new to me as a thing. In our large-scale technology plan, I was a demolition contractor before this, and I was able to do large-scale demolition projects, and so I understand operations and planning, but it was new to me in the area of education. So we did plenty of planning, we had plenty of operations. Before, we were only 1 gigabit per second from the county. It was terrible. I was arguing as a teacher that we need more bandwidth. They said you need to prove it. Some of you are shaking your head. It was ridiculous that we had to prove that we needed it before we needed it, because we needed it now. And needless to say, through a lot of arm twisting and negotiations, we were able to keep our bandwidth up to make sure that we had capacity. And we use some tools in the tech department. A lot of districts in our region don't use the tools that we use. We use tools that most often are found in a startup. Our main communication tool is Slack. I pay for Slack rather than just using the free version, because I need all the communications that my people are doing to be archived so that we can search for things later when a solution comes up. So if one tech's talking to one tech and they said, hey, I think this is the solution, we can archive it and we can search for it. I also don't use free open source help desk. I use Zendesk. And these tools make us effective and responsive and agile. It's worth the money for the customer service side of it to get support to teachers and students right away if you use these modern tools. Of course, we have firewall protection and all those kind of things. I can tell you the last 90 days we're a district of 10,000, so here's some metrics. We have a 99% rating. Every ticket is rated. They don't have to rate it. That 1%, I think, was me. I solved a help desk ticket that somebody wasn't happy with, and they let me know about it. So I dragged down our ratings. They actually said they apologized later, but that was fine. When you're building your infrastructure, high-speed connectivity, right? Data privacy and security, all those things, and I can share with you later. This low-cost devices, home internet access, all these things go on, help us having a digitally rich environment, all under operations. Ongoing improvement, constantly using E-rate funding, other fundings. We transitioned from a home built or in-house built single sign-on system. It was great, but it took a lot of programming. Now we just purchased a large-scale single sign-on processing system, and we've improved district-wide. We switched from an LMS to Canvas LMS recently. They're a sponsor. So the big one was planning, operations for large-scale tech initiatives. Well, it also comes to professional learning for your classified staff and professional learning for your teachers. My techs teach right alongside teachers. They teach them and they teach together, right? The conversation in our district has shifted from how to, click there and click there, to the why. When we first rolled this out, it was painfully obvious that we were just showing people how to click there and click there. We don't really do that so much anymore. We're now more focused on the why of the professional learning. Here's an example of district level PD. You would not know the difference between a teacher and a tech in those pictures. They are one and the same. Our superintendent and board members also do professional learning. So we move from the how to the why. The roles of educators have changed. They're more igniters. They're more catalysts for learning and more student-centered. The teachers are moving to being learning experience designers using technology rather than just a lesson plan. And that professional learning is on purpose. Some ongoing professional examples in our district is that we really highly encourage our students and teachers to constantly improve as professionals. Our teachers are presenting at large conferences, small conferences, or putting on ed camps. We have student-led ed camps also. So we're constantly striving to develop as professionals. We have in-class support with technology coaches on every campus, full release. We could not do that without them. So full release tech coaches to be able to help teachers. I actually need to change their job title because I want to live in a world where I tell somebody I was a tech coach and they'd say, what's that and why do you need it? So imagine 20 years from now, I said I was a tech coach. And say, isn't everybody using tech? Why would you need we don't have whiteboard coaches. Why would you need a tech coach? So we're actually wanting to change that title to be innovative learning coaches because our tech coaches are extremely strong in their pedagogy and extremely strong in instructional practices. The next tenet of a large-scale tech integration plan are making sure you have access to resources, instructional resources. This is sort of the best part of technology in education. I said earlier that technology is a tool, not a learning outcome, and in some ways I'm going to argue against that because technology used right can create powerful learning outcomes. Technology can be a force multiplier. When I was in the classroom and I was teaching struggling readers and writers, and I was able to get 10 computers in the back of my classroom, that multiplied me and made me highly effective. I was able to get directed instructional resources to students for what they needed, almost like a dashboard to learning. If it had to do with spelling, grammar, reading, and so on. I was able to do that through technology. Technology can create interactive simulations, right? So for instance, if you're a math teacher, before you might have been teaching linear algebra and kids are just not getting it. Now you have a bunch of tech tools that allow you to have show like a mental model or a visual representation of complicated math concepts. And those interactive simulations are extremely useful as students are gaining mastery. Technology-rich environments, especially at the high school level, could create some autonomy in students, right? Alan November has Who Owns the Learning? Well, it's a little maybe difficult for the younger grades, but by the time you get to high school, they really need to own the learning and they can use technology to get there. It can teach critical thinking skills. So imagine, you know, a time, and it wasn't too far ago, where the only way a student would learn something is if the teacher knew it, right? That was it. The only way that student's going to learn it is if the teacher knew it. But now with technology, there's multiple modalities that students can use, and multiple modalities students can use to demonstrate learning. And they can elaborate, they can make sure that they're critical thinkers using technology. I won't go on to that one. I will go on to, in the end of the time, equity and access, which is a big topic here. Technology can be an equalizer. Education can be an extremely democratic type of thing that we do in this country. It can be, it doesn't necessarily have to be, especially there's inequity. So technology can provide equity access, right? This happens to have been the last learning outcome for Scholar Plus, to provide equal outcomes for all students, right? Students can now collaborate. No, you know, in the past, they weren't able to collaborate globally. Now they can. They're able to be creators, they're able to be publishers, they're able to use technology as a force multiplier. Never before in history could you do that, but with technology you can, right? Students can take, instead of just doing a standard essay or a standard project, now they can use these tech tools, use these creation tools, and demonstrate learning in other ways they not have been able to do that. And that's fantastic for all of our students. This happens to be pictures of our adult SPED program, 18 to 25. And these students work at the Scholar Bar at that school. It's like a Genius Bar. And these students get real world experience in sort of like a duplicated Genius Bar environment. We just happen to call it Scholar Bar, where they repair things and they help people solve problems. And my techs help work at that Scholar Bar. At our high schools, there's a Scholar Bar at every high school in the library, and it's staffed by students every period of the day. And that's where students go to get help on Chromebooks. It could be hardware, it could be software, it could be triaging something that's broken, but that's where they get help every day. I won't go on to computer science, but just so you know, the state of California have recently changed the way computer science is viewed for UC admissions. And this is a great an example of people getting a better understanding of computer science and what it's for. So it's recently been accepted in the science category as a D category. Move on. So transformation. This use of technology and this movement away from teacher-centered learning to student-centered learning has transformed many classes on campus. I'm not saying all. There's no shortage of opportunity in our district. Not everybody takes that opportunity. But a lot of our classes have changed where students are standing and moving around in real tactile environments. We always look at different furniture for those environments. Yes, they're tech-rich environments because that's my department, but we've transformed teaching and learning. We have maker spaces on campuses. I would like to have little breakout hacker spaces or tinker spaces or other things like that this idea doesn't necessarily come from technology, but we seem to keep pushing it forward, and that's a transformation that we had on our campus. John Dewey said, if we teach today's students as we taught yesterday's, we rob them of tomorrow. And I can tell you some of the transformational highlights. We weren't a common sense certified school when we started this. We missed that, but we are now. We have plenty of teachers that are Google certified. I myself am a Google innovator, and we have a few others on campus. We've partnership with code.org. Our engineering pathways have 3D printing, lasers, we have banner makers and all those kind of things. We've transformed the district with peer tutors. We didn't used to have peer tutors. We have parent tech classes. We have maker camps, coding camps, and all those kind of things during the summer. Those are there. And one of the things that we push in the district is connect, learn, grow. I used to say, they said I couldn't copyright it, and I'm sure it's not my idea. Come to Perris Union, we'll leave the internet on for you. Like Motel 6, but I'm sure somebody else made that up before. But we want you to come to Perris Union. We want you to connect. We want you to learn. We want you to grow. Intentionally, this logo of the growth mindset, where you see the little plant life, you notice those are actually not plants. They're more like a board, like a logic board type of thing. And we've done that intentionally. Our logo for Scholar Plus is the world with a mortarboard and then radio beacons, meaning that we'll always be there for you. Our new district logo at the top is a combination of paying homage to our Scholar Plus logo. Our old district logo was terrible, and I'm sorry if I'm describing your district logo, but it had the lamp of life. It had a pastoral or a hillside in the background, maybe some snowy mountains, a meadow, and a scroll, and maybe a train and a buggy, I don't know, possibly like that. So we did not think that represented our district, especially since we were one-to-one. By the way, I should mention, we're one-to-one full take-home. We've never had Chromebooks and carts day one in our district. Full take-home, they take them home for summer, and they take good care of them. So that's it for sort of the big 6 pillars on technology. Any questions about integration of technology? Get the mic, anybody?
Hi. This is Judy.
I don't know.
She will talk to you since you're here.
Yeah, just talk. I don't know.
Could you talk a little bit about the superintendent's role in making things happen?
If you did not hear the question in the back, it's a great question. The superintendent's role of making it happen. I can tell you specifically for my experience, when I started proposing that the district go in this direction, I had built enough this trust with the superintendent that they were allowing me to manage the project, lead the project, maintain the project. The superintendent's role was to remove barriers when I came to them, and I would let him know, hey, I'm not trying to throw a person under the bus, but these are the barriers that we're running into, and can you remove those barriers? And that superintendent did, and there was one time where it was extremely dicey, where we had not fully implemented our Scholar Plus, and it came down to sacred cows of funding, and there were these disparate departments that wanted to stake claim in funding, and of course to get this done, it needed to be funded, and the superintendent pulled all the leadership team together and said, I know I told you before that we're doing this, but I just want to be clear that we're doing this. And if you don't agree with it, you can give me a resignation by the end of the day. So when it became real dicey, we needed a strong leader, and we also needed a strong leader to communicate that with the school board. So we needed the superintendent to communicate that change to the school board, because school board members, as you know, they don't stay at 30,000 feet, and they want to pick out paint, they want to pick out chairs, they want to do other things. And when word was getting to them that people were staking claim at budgets and that this was going to ruin their categorical funding, the superintendent needed to be very strong on the messaging on this. And our current superintendent was an assistant super at the time, and equally has that same passion for making that happen. So the question was the role of the superintendent. The role of the superintendent was to see the vision, to communicate the vision, and to remove barriers. Yes?
Yeah. Are there particular instructional initiatives that you did to kind of move the project forward in order to get the integration, with it being an instructional initiative, not just a tech initiative or a tool initiative, but an instructional initiative?
I would say yes, and the advantage that we had was that I worked as a literacy coach in the district, and worked as a literacy coach specifically on one campus, and then at the district level on all campuses. And then we created the technology coach position and the technology teacher and special assignment position that I took as a teacher. And so the teaching and learning initiatives definitely had to be there. We definitely needed to move teachers away from student-centered, teacher-centered to student-centered. I often refer to Paula Freire. I often refer to, we need the students to be active participants in the learning. They need to be the subject of the learning. They can't just be listening objects in the classroom. Kids are really good at the game of school. By the time they get to high school, some of our students who get good grades are very good at sitting there passively and agreeing with the teacher and shaking their head, right? So the instructional shifts that we needed to have was definitely moving away from teacher-centered to student-centered and making students active participants in the classroom. It makes it also, the other thing that we relied on with teachers that were hesitant to technology would be, so if a teacher said, I got 5 years to retirement, I don't want to learn anything new, I don't want to do X, Y, and Z. And I wasn't able to change them, but I was able to say, will you let the students use the technology? Will let the students use technology to shape their learning? Will you let the students use these creation tools to demonstrate understanding? I'm going to tell you, the teachers, you don't have to learn everything about all the platforms, but will you let the students do that? And the teachers overwhelmingly said, oh yeah, that sounds really interesting. I am interested in what kind of tools they could use for creation. Guess what happened a year or two later with those teachers that were hesitant? They were very excited about the tools that the students were using, and those teachers learned those tools. So the instructional shift was making sure things are student-centered, making sure students are active participants in the classroom, and at the high school level, students need to be making decisions on the tools that they're going to use to shape their learning. You can't just say, all we're letting you do is use Cornell Notes, and that's how you're going to understand stuff. I'm not making a value judgment on Cornell Notes. I'm just saying there are other tools there that students can use to shape and understand their learning, and technology provides that.